now that the supercharger's all finished, it's time to finish off a couple of little jobs so that I can then do my first start. So those are pretty straightforward. To sort out the studs on the intake and the exhaust manifold, that's pretty straightforward. I need to grind a few welds off, but that's not hard. And then the only other thing is the turbo's oil feed, which I was going to get made at a hydraulics place in town, but 25 quid, it's quite a lot. And the new turbo I've got uses the same fittings at the turbo end as the T2 that came off the original turbo. So I was just going to chop that about, and I've got some other steel tubing of the same bore that I can extend it with. So I'd like to try that route first. It's probably not ideal because it's lengthening it, so it might might vibrate more, and that'll put it under more chance of stress fracturing. But for now, I'm just going to try that. I can always get a fancy line made later. I tend to do all the work sort of on the floor here, sort of a few feet by a few feet. And the best lit place with the vice, the nice flat surface, is just covered in crap and loads of bananas. So I think I'll crack on and sort that out first. That's a bit better. So here's the turbo's oil feed, which I've had in the vise. I've bent it. It didn't need much bending, only a tiny bit. I don't want to bend it much at all, really. And the other end, at the turbo end, I've not had to bend. But if I now line this up with both bits, it's really straight. So I'll just have to chop that, tack it in, take it out, weld it up. Right, that's now tacked into place. I'm just going to try a bit of pressure testing to make sure that I'm not getting any leaks. Tiny little bit of water there. I'll just go over that again. Here's the finished oil line. I've double welded it again now, just to make sure of no drips. Pretty pleased with that. So I'll fit that, and then left to do now is the manifold studs. I've got another new inlet and exhaust gasket. Probably bought about 6 of these over the last couple of years. There you go. Now I've just got to grind the base of those welds where the flange meets the pipes, so that these little spaces clear the welds okay, because some of them are a bit fat. I've just notched the ends of some of these spaces a tiny bit, because without them, some of them aren't quite there. There's a tiny gap there, but with the spacer, with the bit notched out of it, it's spot on. So I'll get fitting that now. That's all the studs sorted now. So turbo next. I'm just sorting out a gasket for the turbo, using some of this turbo gasket material, some sort of sandwich thing. I've never used it before. It seems to drill okay if you keep the drill speed nice and high. Just started to make the first cut there. In the end I tried out the just used the old jigsaw with a nice metal blade, and that's going through it really nicely, around the bends nicely, so probably better than an angle grinder, and then much better than an angle grinder for the centre bit, so that should be done soon. That's all sorted now, so I'll fit the turbo and the oil lines to it. Almost ready for the first fire up since new turbo and supercharger. All I've got left to do now is bleed the fuel system, which is pretty straightforward. But before I do that, I think I might just sort out the radiator, which I have got here, the new one. It's a Honda Civic one, which seems quite popular with people with kit cars. Certainly looks a lot nicer than the old one I had from a Polo. The old one that used to come through this gap and right up about 5, cleared the pump pulley by about 5 mil, so it wouldn't no way it would clear these belts now. Plus it made everything a bit of a pain to get at the crank stuff, timing belt and everything. So aiming to have it back where it should be. It's going to be harder to fit the intercooler, but should be able to sort something out. And then after that I'll have to chop the bonnet up quite a bit to clear the supercharger and also clear the exhaust manifold. I'll have to start thinking about the exhaust soon as well, which used to be this. That was the whole exhaust system, other than a bit of an elbow that went into there. That's like just over 2-inch pipe. It's mild steel, so as you can see, I just couldn't keep on top of the corrosion. I gave it a bit of auto-sol every now and then, but it just keeps coming back. One thing I do have is this 2-inch stainless pipe, and a lot of it, and included is some 90-degree bends, and all that was about 15 quid from the scrapyard. It all used to be, I think it was dairy piping, so I mean it's not as fat. It's a hard life. The diameter of this stuff isn't quite as big, so I suppose I can either fork out for some thicker stuff, like 2¼ inch, 2½ inch pipe, but it's going to be expensive. There's none at the scrapyard, so I either for now just run it with what I've got, or I do something like that and run two next to each other. Sort of a shotgun approach. I don't know yet, I'll have to think about that. I've got some scrapyard box section here. It's pretty thick walled, and I'm going to use this to make the radiator mounts. So I've chopped a bit off, and I'm just going to cut that down the middle and then make 2 cuts along there, and then at the front where it meets the radiator I'll add a section of, I'll weld a section of 4mm steel onto there, and then the bolt can go into the radiator from that side like that. That's the radiator mounted now. I adapted the existing sort of bar that I'd put in there for the old radiator and just ran some box section at an angle to some 4mm plate with a 6mm hole through it for the radiator bolts, and you can see the 2 mountings down there at the bottom. So just got to unbolt this section and then paint it, and then that's the radiator done. I've just wheeled the car out onto the driveway so I can fire it up. I've not attached the radiator yet, so I'll only run it for a short time. First I've got to bleed the fuel system. If any of you have done this before, you may have bought the specialist equipment from Peugeot or Fiat or Citroen garages. Comes in this nice mahogany box. I mean, it costs about I think £260. It's quite specialist equipment, but it does the job, so I recommend you use it. It's got everything you need in it, so I'm just going to stick to using that because it's the right gear to do it with. So I'll just get to that now. was being a bit of a pig to start. I think there was like some persistent air in the lines somewhere, plus the battery hadn't been used for about 6 months, and when I first went to start it, when it was out on the drive, it wasn't a full battery by a long way, so it's been not left on charge overnight, which has really helped. So I should probably bolt the supercharger back on, you know, just to hear it, obviously. Right, supercharger's back on again. Let's give it a go. Yep. Seems to work. So I think for next time I'm going to support the turbo a little bit better, because at the moment it's only a little bit of box section, which isn't great. So I think I'll beef that support up a lot. Maybe have one from back here going across it as well. And then possibly again up from the engine mount across, because there's a fair bit of weight in that. Now that she's starting, I'm just going to make a list of like the home straight things that I need to do to finish for MOT. So I'm just going to update the to-do list.